بحر من لا منطقوني في ودات العالم لا منطقوني في ودات العالم
The diversity within Judaism. The third biggest religion existing on earth is known to be Judaism, a Jewish population of 15 million people worldwide. 5 million Jews that live in the state of Israel, the spiritual and cultural center of the oldest religion, Judaism. Jerusalem around 2000 BC. The Bronze Ages in the Middle East, the time of the occurrence of Judaism, a religion that was introduced by the first Hebrew of Judaism, Abraham, who discovered the one true invisible God. Judaism, a religion based around the idea that God is supreme, the creator of all things, and the powerful being whom we communicate with through prayer. At Mount Sinai, several centuries later, Moses and the Israelites received the Torah, teaching, which revealed the way God wished to be served. The belief in one God, as taught by Moses, is the basic principle of Judaism. The prayer to God is performed 3 times a day. However, God delights spontaneous prayers, which may be performed at any time. The Jewish place of worship is the synagogue, where prayer takes place, facing Jerusalem. God accepts prayer in any language, but the official language of Jewish prayer is Hebrew. The religion contains duties to God, especially modes of worship and rituals, and to human beings, especially truth, justice, and peace. In this mind-blowing documentary, we will find out if there is diversity within the religion Judaism. To discover the truth, we will interview 2 people who both believe in Judaism. For the first interview, we have traveled from the BBC headquarters in London to the city of Hilversum in the Netherlands to interview Mr. Knoppert, who is a history and theory of knowledge teacher at the International School in Hilversum. For the second interview, we traveled to Amersfoort to interview Lior, who was born and raised in Israel and is an artist who lives in Amersfoort. We've put the interviews together to create a documentary to find out, is there diversity in the religion Judaism?
What does Judaism mean to me? Well, it's a world religion, clearly, and to me, it's an interesting thing because there's different ways of looking at Judaism. You have the idea of Judaism as being a religion, and you have it as a sort of historical, cultural, traditional kind of thing. Sometimes they fall together, and sometimes they don't. I'm a non-observant Jew.
Jodendom volgens mij. Ja, vooral dat je van Israël houdt en van je achtergrond, waar je familie, je ouders vandaan komen.
Well, by birth. It's that story of if you have a mother who is Jewish, then you are Jewish. And of course the interesting thing is that we were never raised Jewish with religion. But we have no choice, we are Jews by birth.
Ik ben in Israël geboren, getogen en mijn familie is Jood, dus eigenlijk vanaf mijn geboorte.
Well, it's an interesting thing. I'm not a part of the Jewish religious community by choice, but I am, of course, by non-choice, a member of the Jewish clan, the tribe, the people in that sense. And I guess there's an element of community there, but because I don't observe religiously, it does put you kind of outside the community. One foot in, one foot out, in a sense.
Nee, niet echt. Ik volg mijn eigen leven als kunstenaar in Nederland. Maar wat met de Jodendom te maken heeft, nee, doe ik eigenlijk er niet zo veel mee. En ik heb wel een aantal Jodenvrienden of Israëlische vrienden die hier in Nederland wonen. Maar verder maak ik ook als professionele kunstenaar wel heel vaak kunst over Israël of de Jodendom.
Well, I guess it's become part of my identity in that it's absent from my identity. Because I wasn't raised Jewish religiously, but I am a Jew by tradition, by heritage, I have a very particularly difficult relationship with what Judaism is as a religion. In my family, there's several members of our family who have gone back to the religious ways. Some who've moved to Israel, and they have very strong feelings about Israel as being the country of the Jews. And I have a different perspective on that. So in that sense, you know, it's an interesting and difficult situation. Well, I guess in a sense it affects my actions in the same way that it probably affects your actions. We live in a Judeo-Christian society, so a lot of the law is based on a sort of Judaist, Christian sort of ethical code. What is right and what is wrong. So I'd like to think that in terms of the right and the wrong, I behave according to what Jewish tradition would be.
Ja, ik denk er niet zoveel aan. Het heeft niet zoveel beïnvloed aan mijn identiteit eigenlijk.
To me, I guess it's the idea that you're part of a heritage or a tradition, something that goes back so far. I teach history, so I mean, you know, living in the past is not strange to me. So it's nice to have that sort of connection all the way to the past, and I guess that's the emotional investment I have in it. And of course, I get very emotionally worked up when I feel like people are misrepresenting what it means to be Jewish or a Jew. I guess the core aspects are the same as with pretty much any religion. How should you behave? Where do those ideas come from? And, you know, finding a sort of personal relationship with those things.
Natuurlijk de Tweede Wereldoorlog. En dat wij onze speciale tradities of feestdagen kunnen blijven volgen.
So you don't actually practice Judaism? You don't go
Correct.
to a church or a synagogue?
Correct.
Ik probeer, kijk, omdat ik eigenlijk ver weg van mijn familie en Israël woon, dan is het inderdaad wel een beetje moeilijk om het te blijven volgen. Maar ik probeer inderdaad mijn best te doen om af en toe in de Bijbel lezen of kunst maken over Israël en de Jodendom of de feestdagen volgen, traditie volgen. Nee, juist de opposite. Ik ben eigenlijk wel heel makkelijk ingesteld hierin. Juist niet streng. En ik volg mijn religie op mijn gemak. Ja, maar niet om te gaan bidden, maar vooral voor de kunst, voor het gebouw zelf.
As I said, it's not Jewish, but it's Judeo-Christian, right? There's so many things that are in common between Christianity and Judaism, especially Old Testament. I mean, Old Testament, Torah. Well,
Yeah.
you know, you can say they're essentially the same. And because of that, I guess society is shaped in a certain way. The things that we consider to be right or wrong are kind of based on that. So, I guess in that sense it shapes society. But of course, there's a very interesting discussion. It doesn't seem like it's going to end anytime soon, and that's the political and diplomatic relationship that the Netherlands has with Israel and Palestine. And that's one of those things where my family members who are Jewish have a very strong stance in one direction, and I, as a Jew, but a non-observant Jew, find myself in an opposite direction.
Het is af en toe wel een beetje moeilijk, maar wat we ook wel moeten leren is het scheiden tussen Israëliër zijn en Jood zijn. Want er zijn natuurlijk heel veel Israëliërs die nationaliteit veel belangrijker is voor hen dan geloof. Dus ik ben blij dat ik Israëliër ben. En daarnaast ook wel, ja, Jood. Maar goed, ik probeer eigenlijk meer mijn Israëlische nationaliteit te volgen dan mijn religie.
No, but I think that was my real feeling for not being religious is that, well, I teach history and I teach TOK, so philosophy. I guess because of that, I think that the emphasis is and should be on what humans do, what human nature is, and what we decide to do. So it's easier for me to sort of put that on us rather than on an outside force, rather than on God. You know, God doesn't say what is right or isn't right. But I think there's a role there for what should we do. I don't think that there is a God who tells us, you know, in the moment this is what you should be doing. But I think that, you know, there's a sort of cultural, historical tradition of this is what is appropriate to do. And as long as we've internalized that and behaved that way, then we're doing what he would want us to do. But of course, I don't actually believe he is there. I believe that historically, maybe he was, or, you know, even if he wasn't there, it's important that people at the time felt like he was there because it guided them into a certain type of behavior. Well, that's interesting. I mean, there's a whole lot of ways of looking at it. You could say atheist because absent of theism, absent of God. You could say agnostic because there might be something else out there. Or my preferred version is secular humanist. Everything's on humans. We as humans have the responsibility, we have the rights, and whatever our heritage is, the one thing that we all have in common is we're all human. So if we consider that, then it doesn't matter which sort of, which team we support, we're all playing the same game, which is, you know, living as humans.
Ja, dat is wel een hele moeilijke vraag. Ik ben niet streng gelovig, dus eigenlijk soms heb ik wel het gevoel en soms minder. Nu ben ik 40 jaar oud en ik weet nog niet helemaal met mezelf of ik ja, helemaal in God geloof of niet.
I don't know if I would change very much, really. Because I'm a non-practicing Jew. I mean, I guess in theory, if I wasn't a Jew, so if I wasn't by heritage a Jew, things would be very different because then my family history would be very different. But outside of that, I guess not much would change. My family story would be different, which who knows how big of a change that would make for me.
Wel voor mijn kunst. Wel voor mijn kunst. Vind ik wel heel erg leuk. Dat zou ik niet weten. Dat zou ik helemaal niet weten, want goed, ik ben geadopteerd, hè, sinds 10 dagen oud. Dus ik weet eigenlijk niets anders. Ik weet niet beter. Dus hoe zou het zijn? Dat weet ik echt niet. Ik had niet Jood moeten zijn om dat te kunnen ervaren.
Well, I love the stories. I love the way that Jewish holidays come about because it's that sort of historical storytelling. I love Hanukkah. I don't celebrate it, but I love the story. I love this idea of, you know, a miracle happens and we symbolize that miracle through something as simple as a few candles. It's just nice to have that sort of story become a symbol, and that symbol then can carry on the story. And it doesn't necessarily now mean that, you know, I believe that a certain group of Jews walked through the desert for a certain amount of time and the oil lasted for longer than it was expected to. That might have been the case. I wasn't there, I can't say. But I think the central message of that, you know, there is something more outside, there might be miracles, or that we shouldn't give up when it seems like all hope is lost. I think that's the nice thing about Judaism and other religions. Those stories can give you some comfort or some hope or something nice. And that's why I like Hanukkah, because it's a very visual representation of that hope.
Ik vind ze allemaal hartstikke leuk. Ik heb geen favoriete feestdag of feestdagen. Hetzelfde als ik ben kunstenaar, ik werk heel veel met kleuren. Maar gek genoeg heb ik ook, of juist misschien niet gek genoeg, heb ik ook geen favoriete kleur.
When comparing their Jewish beliefs, Mr. Knoppert and Lior are obviously different, since Mr. Knoppert is an observer and Lior is a believer. Mr. Knoppert is not considered a believer because he doesn't have the idea that there is a God watching over you, while Lior does have this feeling. Instead, Mr. Knoppert is considered a secular humanist. However, both became Jewish from heritage, and Lior and Mr. Knoppert still are identified as Jewish. The main reason for this is that Lior was raised Jewish and Mr. Knoppert wasn't. When comparing the two, this can lead to different opinions. For example, to Mr. Knoppert, Judaism is more cultural and historical, in contrast to Lior, who sees it as a religion. They both also focus on different things in Judaism. Mr. Knoppert thinks it's very important to continue his heritage and recognize the history of Judaism because his family was Jewish. Lior also thinks that your heritage is a very big part of being a Jew, but he also thinks that loving Israel is just as important. Lior is an active practitioner of Judaism and is so much more influenced by the belief. But Mr. Knoppert would argue that his feelings of what is right and wrong are also influenced by the Torah. This is partly because much of the Western world is strongly affected by both Judaism and Christianity. However, even though Lior is a practitioner, he finds it very hard to follow Judaism strictly because he lives far away from Israel, but he still tries to follow their traditions and beliefs and honor Judaism with his art. Because of this, Lior is much more a part of the Jewish community than Mr. Knoppert. However, Lior doesn't feel like being part of the community is so important because his relationship with God is personal, and he doesn't want other people influencing that. For example, when Lior makes art, he bases this on his own beliefs of Judaism. Now that we have successfully interviewed and compared two Jews and their beliefs, we can conclude that there certainly is diversity within religions, which in this case is Judaism. We hope you enjoyed and learned something from our documentary, and we would like to advise you to stay tuned and watch the next episodes of Diversity in Religion.